Hello gamers, it's Nyce. I hope everyone excited for MMO Ashes of Creation is having a nice day. Today I am excited to finally bring you our exclusive interview with Sharif, Creative Director of Intrepid Studios. You'll be able to find chapters and timestamps in the description below. Thank you for the support. Please like the video as it helps others to find the video, and I hope you all enjoy. Please comment your thoughts and feedback below. Without further ado, let's get started. Hello gamers, it's Nyce. Welcome to another episode of The Voices of Vera with myself, Nyce Gaming, our co-host No One, and of course you, The Voices of Vera. We have a very special guest that some of you may know of. We have Sharif, the creative director of Intrepid Studios. Today we'll be chatting with Steven and of course discussing the highly anticipated MMORPG Ashes of Creation, which goes into its Alpha 2 phase October 25th. Before we get into that,
holy smokes!
yes,
It's happening.
It's finally here.
It's right there.
Before we get into that, we just wanted to, of course, thank Steven and Intrepid Studios for just giving us and the community this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you so much, Steven.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, anytime that I have the ability to set aside time, interact with our community, especially you guys, who I feel have been a very in touch aspect of the community content creators, right? I mean, you guys have been doing this for a while now, and I think that you represent a very core slice of our audience right now who are invested in the game and the success of the game, and want to see iteration done on these core systems. You have really good insight and are familiar with a lot of those systems. So this conversation for me is just a very natural one with fellow knowledgeable players. So I love this type of conversation.
Lovely. Yeah, nerds. We're very nerdy about this project, so yes. We're looking forward to it.
All right. So we've done this Voices of Vera Ashes of Creation weekly live stream for a little bit over a year now, just talking with the community about this MMO, right? I've done a lot of Ashes of Creation videos, and I think I can speak for most content creators in our space where one of the most special feelings is knowing that your video or your stream was something that put someone on to Ashes of Creation. It's just like something different about it, So What I would like to do is put you on the spot here. If you had somebody in front of you that never heard of Ashes of Creation before, and you had a 1-minute pitch meeting to sell them on this game, what's different about your MMO? What would you do? And I'll start the timer.
Well, I mean, the first thing I would do is I would talk to them a little bit about, what it is that Ashes is trying to do differently in the space that other MMOs before us have not done. And I think the two things that really stand out is, first and foremost, the way that we're constructing the world that's predicated on player behavior. This is not something that's gimmicky. This is something that allows the player agency over the types of services that get offered, over the types of communities that are built, these pseudo factions that exist within the game world. They have a hand in creating, and that can help shape both their experience and the experience of other players as well. That is something that's intrinsic across many of the systems. And then second, I would say that it is about our philosophy as a company, as a game design. We do believe in risk versus reward. We believe in player integrity. We believe in keeping that player integrity paramount, which means no pay to win, no pay to convenience. And we're going to stick to that. And we're going to make sure that when you achieve something, achieving that win feels good because the bite of failure was on the other side of that door. That is something that I think a lot of games right now, as a race to the least friction possible for players, is what is kind of modern day gaming philosophy for MMOs in the genre. And we're trying to do something that's a little bit more old school and might appeal to a smaller audience, but at least that audience can feel comfortable in knowing that that is our philosophy that we're going to stay on.
Lovely. All right. I think that was close to a minute.
Yeah.
Was it? I don't even know. Where do we land?
That was a good pitch meeting. All right.
I'm sold.
Yeah. I'm going to consider looking into this. This game sounds cool.
Nice. Very good. Welcome. Come, brother.
All right. So let's go ahead and start the Q&A segment. One of the things that attracted me the most to Ashes of Creation is the open development. Seeing things evolve and progress month by month has just been great. It's all been leading to this Alpha 2 launch. Though you may have said this game is a work in progress, maybe once or twice, there will inevitably be players, content creators, and viewers who judge this Alpha 2 like a finished product. You only get one shot at a first impression. We've seen it with other MMOs where they release to a huge population and then they quickly fall off due to lack of player/tester retention. So what will be your response to critics who get their hands on Alpha 2 and feel like it just doesn't meet expectations?
Well, the first thing that I would say is this concept of you only get one, your first impression is at odds with the core philosophy of a transparent development process. So those two are on opposite ends of the spectrum. In fact, the line of thinking that you only get one first impression is what has led many of the developments to develop in the dark. And then when they're ready to make that impression, they end up showing the player population things that they didn't want, whether that be pay to win, whether that be combat that's not fun or functional, whether that be world design that doesn't elicit the types of grouping and social structure that players want to see within an MMORPG. So I think that part of the transparent development process is to mitigate the risk that developing in the dark provides that first impression opportunity. And to be clear, not mince words, that is why that philosophy of you only get one first impression contributes to this non-transparent approach. So I would say that in and of itself, those two things are in odds. I would say, another aspect of it is we've had multiple impressions over the years. We had our impressions in 2016 when we were in December. I think we first ever got mentioned by Massively OP, which is a gaming journalist website that started talking about, hey, there's this new studio in San Diego that is trying to build an MMORPG. We got another impression when we went to Kickstarter in 2017, May, and we talked about our core tenets and our philosophy and the pillars and the game design that we wanted to create. We got another impression when we went to PAX in 2018 and showed our early, builds of the game, essentially, that are a very far cry from where obviously the game is today. We got another impression with APOC, and obviously that one we did not get a positive reception to as a testing platform to vet our backend development and some of the core design infrastructure around our action combat. We got another impression when we went to Alpha 0, and then another impression when we went to Alpha 1. So at each of these stages, the project continued to grow, not just from a team perspective, but also from an awareness within the general MMORPG community about what we as a team were trying to achieve. Alpha 2 is not a different step in that path. Alpha 2 is in the same line of thinking that, hey, the project has now come to a point where many of our core systems, many of our core networking backend is now ready to test at a larger scale than we have previously ever tested before. And in doing so, we will be able to identify components of that system that either need to be fine-tuned, addressed performance, systems that need to change and get iterated upon, so that when we're ready to go into further development and production of the biomes and zones outside of the riverlands, the tropics, and the desert that we're going to be experiencing this initial phase 1 of Alpha 2 testing, we have vetted the approach appropriately and adjusted the tools as necessary so that the team can start marching forward and continuing to expand the content of the world. That is ultimately the reason for Alpha 2, is to ensure a performance-based stable environment where fun can be had in our core loops so that we can make sure how we're building the rest of the game is vetted.
Okay. I like that. Basically not waiting until, you get so far in the design process just to realize players don't like it, but you're already X amount of biomes in, X amount of systems in, and need to start over. I think that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think it's also very important to understand that Ashes is a very systems heavy game.
Yeah.
And what that means is when you build foundationally and layered one system on top of another, and those systems inform each other and they're integrated with each other, when you make large changes after you're too far down the road, it can have completely destabilizing effects on some of those core loop interactions. And it can be a very painful process to go back and adjust those things at too late of a date, right? So each of these incremental testing periods where we invite the community to come take a look at the state of the game, take a feel at how these game systems interact with each other, that gives us opportunities to iterate as we develop.
Well said. Well said.
So, Steven, one of the difficulties of doing a Q&A with you is attempting to find a question that hasn't been answered yet. And I have done a lot of research, attempting to make sure to find something that you have not answered. And so I went back to one of the Q&As that you did with Asmongold 4 years ago. And this one was one of the first videos I actually saw on Ashes of Creation, and it caught my attention because you were talking about how your castle sieges are going to be 250 v 250 and you're working towards 500 v 500. Now, the MMO I was playing at the time would literally lag out with 1/10 of the population. And so I was like, there's no way. There's no function, like there's no way you can actually like pull this off. Like you had me at large scale PvP, right? And so I was wondering, I don't think it's been answered since then, but it's currently 250 v 250. Is it possibly going to be 500 v 500? And could you potentially provide more information on small and large scale objectives that will exist in castle sieges?
So the first thing I would say is that we have a lot of great engineers on the team. And we have a very strong engine team, which obviously the community had an opportunity to hear from a few months ago when we did our networking backend kind of, in-depth look at what Intrepid Net provides us as a project. I will say that, obviously our team, our veteran team, have worked on many other projects, some of which have seen very large player density, such as PlanetSide and PlanetSide 2, where this is not outside of the realm of capabilities from a technological standpoint, right? And the benefit that Unreal Engine 5 provides developers is the opportunity to change what is necessary to change within the engine, which within the source code, to facilitate the game design that you're trying to achieve. So that's the first point. The second point I would say is that right now, with our scale testing that we have been doing with our Alpha 1 testers, we can comfortably achieve roughly 300 players on a single server worker with about 2,500 NPCs and still have roughly a 30 FPS on the server. Now, frame rate on the server is different from frame rate on the rendering side. Those are two very different things. Generally, in order for players not to notice performance issues such as rubber banding or lag and responsiveness from NPCs and other types of interactions on the server that get validated or adjudicated, you want to have your FPS, at least above 20, I would say. So our metrics currently point to a very positive trend when it comes to how the networking backend is facilitating Alpha 2 right now. Given that, in order to achieve the types of player versus player scaling that we want to, we are not a far cry off from facilitating those types of numbers. So I would say that given time and given the ability to inspect the Alpha 2 performance and the data that we collect with Alpha 2 player tester participation, we are going to achieve 500 versus 500. Now, setting that aside, now that's not at the start of Alpha 2. This is going to be as we go through. Yeah. So just to be clear, let me make sure.
I heard at the start. That's what my brain went to.
However, to your second part of the question, when we talk about, why does the design want to try to account for these types of large player battles? Well, the reason why is because, in my opinion, the types of PvP events where you have large player orchestration and coordination is really the ultimate goal for what a massively multiplayer experience is trying to provide. Now, whether that is rooted in player versus player or player versus environment, there are even some designs that call for high player density in a player versus environment setting, such as the events against nodes, right? The monster events against nodes, those wave type events, where we want a lot of people interacting. Now, a lot of those types of designs focus on one central focal point, that can just become a Zerg fest. But we do have plans, as you alluded to, in order to provide more group-centric activities that play into the overarching outcome of a large event like a castle siege.
Sure.
Some of those types of objectives include things like control points, include things like NPC boss engagements, include things like small dungeon encounters that might exist within the siege environment, in competition with groups from the opposing side. Right, those are the types of designs that we want to encourage for these large player battles, so that not everything relies or comes down to one singular event where it's Zerg v Zerg, but
Yeah.
down to instead individual skill performances at a group level and a raid level as well.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, Stephen. Because I'm going to speak for Nyce here, but other MMOs we've played in the past, due to technology, due to the time with which they came out, some of them have to resort to sharding. They have to resort to
Sure.
minimizing the amount of players in an area in order to have proper performance for the game to work. And then you have other games that they'll branch and do battlegrounds, and they'll branch and they'll do this, and they'll branch and they'll do this, and you start fracturing the community in a way to where all of a sudden it doesn't feel like an MMO anymore. It feels like you're queuing up to do whatever content you want to do.
Right. And I mean, and the reason for that is obviously, when those games, for whatever reason, when they were being designed, there perhaps either wasn't the appropriate tech stack that was planned because the design needs didn't call for it at the time, and those design needs evolved over time, right,
Sure.
to include perhaps these more massively multiplayer engagements. And unfortunately, the back end wasn't made in a way to facilitate that. So they're trying to institute workarounds that can still achieve the sense of that large player engagement, but confined within what the architecture can allow for.
Sure.
All right. That sounds good. So you are not only producing a MMO, but essentially leading a company. Sometimes in leadership comes mistakes. When it comes to the development journey thus far, what are your biggest regrets when it comes to Ashes of Creation? And what are your proudest successes for your team?
That's a great question. What were the largest mistakes? Well, I think that, when you're an early company and you are working towards goals, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And this is true really of any endeavor. Now, we had and still do have, obviously, the benefit of very senior veteran developers who have seen a lot of different projects at a lot of different stages, at a lot of different situations. And we're able to lean on those experiences to help guide the pitfalls that would normally occur with any part of any development, right? I would say that if, reflecting on, what I would do differently starting early on, is probably focus more around getting faster functional large player testing quicker. A lot of times we spent drilling in on individual systems design, individual feature development, testing those within kind of closed environments, and not kind of one, pre-blocking out, a large portion of the world, and two, trying to prioritize and quickly get large amounts of testers in early on, because we went through different iterations of our backend as a result of that. We spent a lot of time focused on building individual things, 2017, 2018, that ended up not being possible. And we had to kind of scratch what we were doing there and redo some of the backend stuff that we were working on. Now, that can have trickle-down effects, obviously, across gameplay systems, because those gameplay systems need to be hooked up to that networking backend and need to know how to be constructed, which eventually becomes engineering debt that we have to pay down at a later date. The other thing that I did early on, that was perhaps something I've done a complete 180 on now, is my perception of production as a team and how they're meant to interface with the development team. I had heard very big horror stories about, what production, over management can do in a development atmosphere. And so I stayed very flat very early on, but that inundated my leads who should be subject matter experts that are gurus within their field with tasks that were related more towards project management and production. And that was not something I really wanted them to do because that's not what they were great at. And
Sure.
production allows for that layer, obviously, to get handed off to a group or a team of individuals who are focused about managing that time, that perspective, that strategy long term, and making sure that the development team is unblocked and able to work well against those goals. That's what I would say are things that perhaps I would take back with me and change. What was the second part of the question?
The product success of your team. Like, what's something your team has accomplished,
Oh,
and you're
yeah.
just like, just made you
I
proud.
think the really the shock and awe of what this team does is that they react well. And like I said, the greatest threat to any endeavor is the unknown, and you can't always know what those unknowns are. And that's when you start flexing that's when you start flexing the muscle of reaction, right? Like, how does your team respond under pressure? How does your team respond in firefight? That is something that our team can do very well. Now, I don't want to keep flexing that muscle. That's not a muscle that you want to be in a position to have to use all the time. It's a great one to have. But I would say that our team is above and beyond when it comes to that ability to react. The other thing I would say is that a lot of people don't really, the idea of passion is a nebulous term sometimes. A lot of people say, "Oh yeah, great, they're passionate about something." Our team is truly passionate about the genre. And I'm not saying necessarily that that you have to be super passionate about always the project that you're on, but they are also very passionate about Ashes of Creation. It is something that's near to home, close to the heart. So that provides a level of investment that is more than just doing your scope of work, but is also engaging with the audience. And we're seeing that now as the gates kind of open up to the Alpha 1 testers being in the pre A2 testing, our development team getting an opportunity to interface with them. And that's something I know the players have enjoyed, and it's something that the developers have enjoyed as well, because it aligns with that passion. You get to see a visceral response from your target, audience, who is also your brethren and sisters in the genre you love. And that is something that is very motivating. And I love it that I consider it a great success that our team excels in that motivation and is able to interact with the community.
Lovely.
That's
Good
great.
to hear.
Okay. This is a long one, Steven. I'm sorry. But this is like if I were given one question to ask to you, this is my one. So I'm shooting my shot as well as possible. But I'm a
Okay.
I'm a huge believer in good process leads to good results. And I really like your 64 class system. I really like that it has rock paper scissors mechanics. And I think too often in other MMOs, classes often get the nerf hammer to a point to where they become unplayable in content. They'll just get removed for a patch or for forever. And the main reason we play MMOs as players is to have our classes feel powerful. And I think Ashes should be a lot more resistant to getting nerfed because the game is designed for each class to have strengths and weaknesses. However, in other games, in another game, Nyce and I haven't encountered an issue where you could choose to be a vampire, for instance, and the bonus was higher mitigation at the cost of increased flame damage. However, in actuality, the flame damage bonus wasn't high enough, and it just like you just had more mitigation everywhere, and so the choice became be vampire or be outclassed. And so, what I am wondering is, how will your team look to identify and adjust a skill or class when the rock is no longer beating scissors?
I mean, with all things balance, first and foremost, with a game as systems heavy and integrated as ours, perspective needs to be holistic.
Mhm.
And a lot of times, when you lose sight of that holistic approach, you can end up in situations where the meta that you just described is a non-choice factor for the player. Um, and at that point, you need to ask yourself from a design standpoint, what is our goal? What is the goal that we're looking to provide? Is eight-player agency the goal? And in which case, choice should matter. And that means there has to be alternative options. And that those alternative options weighed against the holistic perspective need to be valid and have a place that they fit within the rock, paper, scissors design approach. I think that with our class system, the goal is to deliver a class fantasy that fits the design of a rock paper scissors trump system, essentially, right?
Yep.
And so, to a degree, that actually gives our designers an easier job because when something is quote out of balance, it depends in which direction the out of balance is within, right?
Exactly.
Meaning this
Yeah.
does it play towards the arc of what that role is meant to provide in the rock paper scissors design, in which case that's a good thing, right? Potentially that's a good thing. It depends on how it stacks against
Yep.
the other aspects of different abilities, which are meant to exist within the arc of those rock, paper, designs. So I think, it's difficult to give an answer that's specific because the use case is a very broad one when we're talking about balancing design. But, ultimately, I would say that it's done in a holistic environment. And it is usually done in concert with some rubric we're using in order to anchor our design choices.
Sure. Yeah. So to go off this a little bit more, one of the MMOs that we've played in the past, they were very responsive to complaints where it was like, hey, this is too strong, nerf this, you got to nerf this. And it almost felt like each patch was reactive to complaints. And then other games that we played, it was like, hey, we hear your complaints about this. Our back-end dev tools show us like we can evaluate wars, we can evaluate large-scale PvP, we can evaluate this. We see that this class is overperforming because they're winning way more. And so they were able to identify in this other game that like, hey, these look to be overperforming. Now we're going to dive deeper in. We're gonna dig further down in and evaluate further.
Sure. I mean, that's part of the holistic approach, right?
Mhm.
What you just described was feedback. Now, you don't want feedback that you're getting ping ponged off of, patch after patch, in which case the players start to get whiplash. Okay, I can't plan anything around my class design.
Mhm.
I can't build towards itemization progression because who knows when you're going to rip the rug out from under my,
Yes.
choices that now take, potentially hundreds of hours in order to achieve. So I think there is a level of diligence that's required on the development team to ensure that when inspecting the feedback provided from a player population, that the feedback is in line with the goals of the design team, that the player population is working in concert with those goals and understands those goals because it's clearly communicated to them. And then additionally, that sentiment is always rooted and validated in data. And data is a critical component of ensuring that your design adjustments are having the effect you intend. It cannot be rooted in anecdotal evidence provided by player sentiment because in those
Yep.
situations, louder voices can have a broader influence. So it's a combinatorial approach between this holistic view of player engagement and data centric analysis.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you.
All right. Let's see. Ashes of Creation has been presented as a PvX game or even an open world PvP MMO. How do you intend to satisfy those who love difficult in-game PvE content? Players coming from the hard mode trials of ESO, the ultimate raids of Final Fantasy XIV, or World of Warcraft Mythic Plus dungeons and stuff like that.
I'm not, to be honest with you, I'm not sure that we're trying to compete with those games and the content that they provide in that arena, right? Because we're a different game. We're a PvX game, which means the types of challenges that PvE players can expect from us will oftentimes revolve around the additional component that players that you can't predict their actions provide the encounter design. Um, so that's something that's systemically built in a PvX approach. Now, does that mean that we won't have repeatable content for PvE players to experience where PvP is not often a component of the design? Yeah, I believe that those things will exist. But can you say, hey, I want you to build it as good as Final Fantasy 14 or as good as World of Warcraft's? I don't think that's our goal. I don't think we're trying to create those types of experience to the degree that those games do, because those games are focused on a different player loop than we are focused on. So, if that creates kind of burst bubbles of expectations from players who are less, aware of what Ash's core pillars and designs and the identity that we're trying to achieve is, that's part responsibility of us to make sure that we're constantly communicating this approach, part the responsibility of the testing apparatus that we use to engage with the audience, and part the responsibility of content creators to ensure that the message is getting delivered to different audiences. But yeah, I think it's important to make sure that you have a firm identity in the game you're trying to create, because if you're chasing disparate communities, then eventually you're going to have a game that nobody wants.
Yep. Trying to please everybody, end up pleasing no one. I think it's
not me specifically.
Oh yeah, not this no one.
not me, no one specifically. He's talking like as a broad general term.
Well said. I like it. That's something I try to remind people about a lot, is those other games still exist. They're still out there if that's your preference. So I like that answer.
For sure.
Yeah, I think identity is huge. I think knowing what you are and what you're about, and like having that core pillar of what you want to have for a game is really important, because then you know how to cater to other things. You're not just like chasing whatever the next meta is. So like, hey, we're gonna do arenas, and then we're gonna do dueling, and now we're gonna have trials, and we're gonna throw all this stuff together, and it just doesn't sometimes it doesn't fit. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. So I've played games in the past, Steven, where when you're fighting people or monsters in a game, your single target aspects have like a lot of depth, a lot of skill, a lot of replayability. And then sometimes in a patch or overall, all of that is wiped out by 2 to 3 very strong, overpowered AoE skills. And the reason I'm bringing this up is a few months ago, Nyce and I had a fun conversation in our Discord talking about the benefits of powerful AoEs, especially combating large-scale groups in PvP and stuff like this. But the overwhelming argument against it is you don't want to make too much of a situation to where 2 to 3 skills and AoE skills completely eliminate that depth of combat. Like they should have a place, but they shouldn't dominate. And so I was just curious if you wanted to maybe go on a rant about your guys' philosophy on like AoE based skills versus single target skills, and kind of hoping what you're looking to accomplish in Ashes of Creation.
Well, I think that this harkens back a little bit to the question you asked about balance. I think that when you think about the components that create an ability, you have things like cooldown, mana consumption, right? And usually those are an adverse relationship with area of effect, total damage output, right? Those things can have inverse effects on each other. So to answer your question, like if we're talking about AoE abilities, generally the paradigm I look towards is AoE abilities are not a sustainable farming approach or grinding approach for as much as individual ability targeted abilities are.
Sure.
Right? So you want to use those in specific situations where you get the highest bang for buck, the highest return on the additional either energy consumption or the cooldown that you're expending as a result of that. Our approach in the class kits. Now, that's not true across the board for all classes. Some classes are going to have a higher disposition of AoE abilities. Some classes are going to be more efficient at using AoE abilities versus single target abilities.
Sure.
Some builds within those classes are also going to have benefits, but this is a give take choice, right? You're making specific choices when specking that direction or choosing that particular archetype because you want to play as that type of rotational player. But those things again play into the balance approach, which aligns with some rubric that we use internally in order to define what those characteristics should exist at in relationship to other ability types. So without a specific example of how specific AOEs are either problematic, like if we're talking about diminishing returns, should AOEs have an uncapped limit on the number of entities that it affects? Our approach right now is no, they shouldn't be uncapped. That we're going to apply some diminishing return effects on AOEs because we have certain instruments within level design or within encounter design that involve choke points where we don't just want it to be about who can mage ball a particular location and prevent access as a result of that. Many of us have experienced that in other game designs.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good. So some of the mitigating factors that can be utilized in order to avoid those situations are diminishing returns. Those are some things that we're employing, but also just the general balance between the skills.
Yeah. The mage ball question that was one of the big points that was brought up because, when you're going to have large scale combat, in a PvX environment, you do need powerful AoEs. You do need powerful skills in order to combat in a certain situation. But sometimes it becomes a situation to where, like you said, if it becomes too powerful, you end up like Henry Ford Model T-ing a situation where you have an assembly line and everybody's like, okay, now hit this skill now, hit this skill now, and it just takes away the
I used to
combat.
do that all the time. In fact, as a matter of fact, in one of the MMOs that I played, it was a standard operating procedure amongst our raid leaders that compositionally each group would have people placed within the raid UI according to the sequence in which they were to fulfill their rotation of AoE effects. So we'd be like party members 1, AoE rotation now. Party members 2, AoE rotation now. We'd call it off like that because it was just the most optimal, completely non-contended approach towards a particular encounter design. I'm not going to say that we can completely rule that aspect out within Ash's encounter designs. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of class composition, strategy plays that people have unique build types and maybe orchestrate those types of effects.
Sure.
But the idea there is having agency to have multiple answers for situations, not always the same one.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. All right. Ashes of Creation appears to take the best parts of previous MMOs and bring them all together, whilst also looking to innovate. How do you feel Ashes of Creation will separate itself from the competition within the MMORPG genre upon launch?
I think that the way that we ensure we do things different is exactly a testament to the things we're doing right now, which is opening up alpha to have players participate at this stage of the development, where we can collect real-time feedback from our core audiences, and they can see the game changing as a result of that feedback and iteration. I think it's that engagement that's the greatest strength to the project. It's also, as I've said in the past, one of the more painful things that can happen at a time too, because it's all about the art of communication. How do we ensure that the appropriate expectations are being set, that the right engagement is being had, and that the right message is staying on track for what the product needs right now. So, I really do look at that as our greatest strength.
Okay, so could you foresee Ashes of Creation releasing to the biggest MMORPG launch that we've had recently, like the last 10 years, like breaking record
Oh,
numbers?
of course, absolutely. I think when we are ready to launch, and I've said this in the past, I believe we are going to be one of the largest MMOs to launch. Do I believe that Alpha 2 is that? No, I do not. Do I believe that that this phase is, that it should be misconstrued with some business goals? They're not. This phase is about development goals. This phase is about stability, performance, and making sure we can find the fun in the gameplay loops. So, it's not about churning through content. It's not about, having a very high retention amongst the players who are participating in early Alpha 2 as testers. It is about ensuring that we have the necessary involvement from our core audience in order for us to test the systems we've built, to test the services that we've built, and to iterate on the loops that we intend to provide as our core gameplay loops.
All right. Look forward
Yeah,
to it.
I just looking off of things that happen on social media and everything, it's like you often see games go viral due to, in-game events that happen and stuff. And I could easily see, because you have open development for Alpha 2, the more you're adding and iterating on things, the more people are excited about, they're going to talk about it, like resonating with the community in that way to where people are in tune with like what's going on and they're like, this is awesome. I think it's a big deal. It's a big deal for a not only keeping your player base, but attracting more people to try stuff out. Like, I mean, I tried Helldivers 2 as an example earlier this year because of all the fun clips that were happening, because of everybody sharing, like, hey, and the developers were awesome. They're just very open, candid about what their game is. Like, we're not doing PvP. That's not what we're about. We're about this. And I thought it was great.
Yeah, I think that when you think about like market saturation, when you think about the current impression that Ashes of Creation has as an MMORPG project within the MMORPG community, I think we have a wide audience familiarity with the project already at this stage, which, as I've said in the past, can be both a detriment and a benefit. I think that the number one negative that we see about Ashes of Creation is the length of time it has taken to develop the project. And the reality of it is that, this length of time we have spent comparatively to the goals that we have to achieve from a feature perspective and a content creation or content perspective is something that's necessary to ensure we're doing things a right way. It takes time to cook, right? And I can
Yeah.
get the impatience. I get the desire to have a thing now. But if that's the worst of the feedback that we're receiving, then we're doing something right, because when the product is ready, when those individuals who are waiting to experience Ashes of Creation, and are not engaged every day in following, the development, but are taking a cursory glance or cursory look at it every other month or every
Yeah.
6 months, when the product is ready, I am confident that our design philosophy, the quality of the game that we are attempting to create, the experience of the developers and what we can achieve, and the engine that we're using and the technology that we're creating will be a AAA class product that is extremely successful as a MMORPG. I do believe that, and that is something that you want your project lead to feel and aspire to be.
Yes.
Like, that is a good thing that I am confident in us achieving. And along the way, as long as we're focused on the right layer of communication with our audience, and we are iterating in a fashion that is open and available to feedback, I think we'll hit that target.
Let them cook. Let them cook.
Great.
By
So
the way, I know I'm
I
getting
want,
super dark, and I apologize if I'm just like a black screen. I don't know. It's getting like darker here.
oh, it's okay. So I watched the live stream that you had a few days ago with DA and Yokai, and an interesting topic was brought up from them specifically talking about players outside of the node doing nefarious things. And they talked about how they would come into the node and build weapons to fight them and then take down their node. And you brought up a great point that guild wars can be used as a potential tool to combat these types of players. And I know this may get shot down. I know, but I was wondering if you could tell us what are the benefits for winning a guild war and what are the penalties for losing?
I would punt that question because it's something that design is actively debating, and is something that they have a number of different approaches that they plan to institute as part of A2. So I would say that, there's obviously a realm of rewards that are possible. There's progression within the guild system itself. There's potentially temporary guild buffs that can be applied as a result of successfully winning. There are temporary skill points that can be assigned potentially as part of winning. What we want to be conscientious of with these types of systems is that they're not something that can be gamed. Because in other games where I've played as a guild leader, there was not a lot of thought put into how guilds might game that system and initiate wars that are proxy dummy wars that aren't real in order to have the parent guild or whatever succeed. So
Sure.
there will be considerations for trying to avoid that. But as a reward system, I think anything is on the table as incentive to want to successfully achieve an outcome there.
Sure. Yeah. So Nyce and I were talking about this a few days ago, and we were talking about this situation where players can travel across the world. It's by design to do so. It's by design to go other nodes. And we got to thinking because we watched the Node War live stream and we saw like you can siphon off XP debt. You can potentially take over part of the node land and put loot drops for your specific node. And so there's penalties for winning and losing there. And we're like, okay, and our minds got racing. We're like, okay, well, let's say hypothetically, like as you level up, you can expand your node members. Like you can go, or for your guild, you can go from 100 to 200 people. Well, what if you lose a guild war, you drop a level and all of a sudden, you have to kick 50 members as an example. And so that's why
generally, that's great context. Generally, what I would say is that when we talk about reverting progression, that can be a little bit more of a tangled web. Right.
Sure.
Because from a systems perspective, you start granting those benefits. It can be difficult to unwind those things, especially given that there might be significant investment in order to achieve them. So
Sure.
generally, design wise, I look to focus more around like buff debuff approach, right? Than it is to unwind progression.
Okay. So like potentially like a damage debuff, hypothetically, of course, like nothing's in stone. Okay, cool.
All right. The new player experience is very important in a MMO. It is what can determine if a player is retained or even sees endgame. We've constantly been told some MMOs get better at endgame, but this ignores the importance of a meaningful leveling experience. How do you envision the new player experience for those entering Vera? And this could be like, towards launch, like your final, vision of that.
Yeah, I think that, one of the things that Ashes as a design has that speaks specifically to this new player acquisition, statistic, is that each of the realms is going to be different and that we onboard player to social experiences very quickly. And the reason for that is, in a lot of MMOs that we've played that are further down the road than their launch date, your new player experience is completely devoid of player interaction, player-to-player interaction.
Yeah.
And that's because you're going through all the early game content when the rest of the player population has moved on beyond that.
Yes.
So what do nodes provide uniquely from a world building perspective with regards to those starting areas that players are being onboarded on? It allows them to immediately interface and visualize that social environment of the world, because these node locations that are generally going to be starting earlier in your leveling experience, because those will be the first that get traffic, are going to have reasons for other players to return to them, to engage with services in them, and to watch the points of interest around them dynamically change spawner sets that make them relevant hunting grounds intermixed with the low-level populations. In addition to that, there are going to be certain systems that ensure low-level populations have a place within the world economy and have a place within the world development scene in how certain buildings get made, torn down, and made again to satisfy the interest of the traffic that's relevant to that particular node. So there's a level of complexity that exists in how new player onboarding is integrated across, systemically the world design, that I think nodes as an approach help facilitate significantly.
And I think you got the last one there.
By the
Yeah.
way, if
Yeah.
my conversation is too designer talky,
Oh no, this is good.
tell me. I'm sorry. Today was a little bit of a cluster for me. So my headspace is very much in that spot.
No, that's okay. It's okay. I think this has been awesome.
Yeah.
So, all right. Once again, in the same vein of trying to find questions that haven't been asked or asked for a while, one of your Kickstarter goals that was met was having an in-game stock market. We've not heard anything about the in-game stock market in a while, and this got my imagination flowing. I love combat, but I also love making money to fund my combat. So
Exactly.
I want to know my capabilities.
That's the type of player I am too.
Like I need the money to keep going. Like help me fund my war machine, basically. So my question is, what can you tell us about the stock market? And can I do things like potentially short a node market right before I siege it? Because you said that the market will shut down when a siege happens, but is there futures trading? Can I short it and then take advantage of dominating and crushing the node?
Yeah. So there hasn't been really any work other than paper design on the stock market, to be clear. And the stock market is obviously a different system than the auction house.
Yep.
And I think what you're referencing is likely the material auction house of a particular node when it is under siege. After the declaration period is launched, that material market becomes frozen so as not to allow the potential reward pool that exists within the node, being the particular materials as part of its warehouse structure,
Sure.
can be looted and removed after the declaration period. Now, with regards to the stock market, in the past, when I've talked about this design, takes into account certain metrics that relate to success and failures of organizations. Now, those organizations can be guilds, they can be node citizenship populations, they can be social organizations, they can be religious institutions.
Sure.
Whatever, there's a number of different pseudo factions within the game that can potentially have player interest and can derive some success metrics from specific event engagements. Those event engagements could be things like guild wars, node wars, caravan runs, trade agreements, social policy enactments, the wave-based node events. Like, there's a number of different things where you can have success failure points that then inform the metric that the stock price is predicated on, and players can purchase in at a certain price. That's the intent behind the stock market system. And so, to answer your question, is it possible that as an outside actor, you could influence the performance of a particular organization across one of those events? And the answer is yes. So if you wanted to, as an adverse party, engage with, let's say, a guild that you don't like when they're running a trade run, or when they're engaged in a node war, or when they're attempting to complete a raid boss, there is the PVX component of being able to interrupt or engage with them in those events and turn the outcome towards a negative, driving the potential stock value of that organization down.
Excellent.
All right. You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Steven Sharif is all about insider trading.
Insider trading is a reality. I mean, it is a truth. And prior to the SEC's formation, again, I am not a fan of insider trading. Just to be clear, in the game design perspective, this is a truth of human history, and we want to emulate that truth.
Absolutely.
Because it creates interesting dynamics between players that serves as soft friction that people can get pissed about and invested in.
Yes.
I completely agree. Like I was looking at this and looking at situations to where, you appoint a mayor, right? And the mayor can be honorable. The mayor can be upstanding, and the mayor can also not be those things and just basically be like, "Hey guys, we are going to invest and build into animal husbandry. You may want to get in on the ground floor here because I'm guiding the direction of the node.
Absolutely.
Here you go. Be an angel investor and get rich." And so,
and now you have a spy that's a part of that citizenship group who's like, "Yo, come here. I just got the DL on what the mayor said he's going to do. Let's go invest in it and buy that stock out at a higher price than their population can, and we'll reap the return. And they won't even know it's us that's doing it." So, like, I mean, there's a lot of layers of interaction there that all relates to player driven experiences, which is the holy grail ultimately of any online multiplayer experience. We as designers, we as developers can only curate so much. Ultimately, if our approach instead is to provide tools that then the players get to utilize to create their own stories, those are the ones that we as players tend to remember best.
Yes.
I agree. And yeah, Nyce and I have talked about this in the past. Our most repeatable experiences in other MMOs has always been the repeatable content that you give the players a sandbox to play in to where they can build themselves up or tear themselves down. And that's where you're going to generate the most replayability.
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay. All right, so Steven, we have a fun surprise mini game for you to take part in.
A mini game? Oh my gosh, you guys designed a mini game?
Oh yeah, we got a fun mini game for you. So we are going to do MMO Blind Ranks. So as a gamer, you were as a gamer, you were inspired to make an MMO because you saw the genre wasn't the same anymore. We have a list of 10 MMOs. You may not have played all of them, but as a gamer and an MMO enthusiast and just being in the industry, I'm sure you're at the very least aware of them, have some small opinion about them at the very least. We want you to blind rank these 10 MMOs just for fun. The catch
as a gamer, this is you, like what you want to play.
Take off your CEO hat, like,
Is it possible for me to disassociate the CEO hat and the creative director on my project hat from me as a gamer?
Yep.
Oh no!
If you're friends
that's our goal.
This sounds dangerous. This sounds all risk and no reward. But okay, go ahead.
You go to your next gaming conference. You're there with the other CEOs, like, "Hey, so I saw you put me at number 9. Just say your list was as a gamer."
What? Oh my god! Who approved this?
We're not outing anybody. We're not outing anybody on who approved this. Yep. So, but yeah, this is blind rank. You're not going to know the next game, and so this is the fun part. Like there may be a game that you could have put higher, but you put 10 was your last choice, and now it has to go at 10.
Yep.
So
okay.
The catch is, and for the audience to understand, just to preface this for you guys. The MMOs at the bottom of his list don't mean they're bad or he hates them. He doesn't know the whole list. He's going to be slowly revealed this. And now that you guys understand the rules, let's go ahead and start it off. Else?
All right. So game number 1 is Lineage.
Good old Lineage 2.
Lineage 1 or Lineage 2?
Lineage 2.
Sorry, Lineage 2.
Lineage 2. Okay. Lineage 2. Oh man. I'd probably put that at number 2.
All right. Lineage 2 at number 2.
And I just want to say again, this is me as a player This is
Yep.
not me as a developer or as the head of a company. This is entirely me as a player, and it doesn't mean that I don't think any of these games are good. So
Exactly.
Yeah, we're
I
we're
can't believe I
attempting
got roped in. I can't believe I got roped into this mini game, but I'll do it.
we're attempting to showcase gamer Steven and
Yeah.
separate him from CEO
All right.
developer Steven. All right,
Okay.
game 2, Star Wars Galaxies.
Ooh, I put that at number 5.
Number 5. Okay.
Okay. Number 3, Elder Scrolls Online.
I'd put that at 7.
7. All right.
Okay.
Remember
And
to
by the
trick
way,
it.
love Elder Scrolls. Think Elder Scrolls Online is a great game. It really found its footing, after its initial launch. We have a lot of people who worked on Elder Scrolls. We have a lot of people who worked on Star Wars Galaxies. Um, love both of those games.
Yes, I think this is a fun and challenging game. Obviously, because of the fact that you don't know what's on the rest of the list, but
I know. I'm trying to save space.
yeah.
I know. There's game theory here. There's definitely some game theory. So
You also gotta, remind people that hey, I'm not doing this as the CEO. You're thinking about your peers and what they think, and then
Right.
also you have
Right.
employees that worked on these games, and you
I
put it at the
know.
bottom like, oh, I thought I did good work on that, but yeah, sure, number 10, Steven.
Oh my God.
All
no
right.
pressure or anything.
I want
No
to
pressure.
eject from this game.
All right, number 4, World of Warcraft.
I would probably put that at number I'd probably put that at number 8.
Ooh.
Okay.
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 And full disclosure, I have never been a huge WoW player. So, I never really got into it. Not because I had anything against the game, but because I was mainly playing Lineage 2 at the
Yeah.
time.
Sure.
Definitely.
All right, number 5, an MMO I've seen quite a bit, Star Citizen.
Yeah, this one always gets brought up in our comment sections for some reason.
Yeah.
I haven't played Star Citizen. I am obviously familiar with the development. I think they're trying to do a lot of really cool stuff. And I hope they succeed in all the things they're trying to do. But I would probably put them at 10. And the reason for that is for me as a player. I am just not I'm not a huge sci-fi person. Star Wars obviously has a special place in my heart because I love Star Wars,
Yeah.
the IP. And I thought their crafting system and the Jedi system was unbelievable. But I would probably put Star Citizen at 10 for me.
All right.
Okay.
All right. So next up we have Arcage.
I would put Arcade at number 1 for me, and it's not number 1 because of the choices and decisions that were made throughout the development, but I thought it as an MMO had the most potential that I as a gamer would align with. And that was down the same thread of this kind of PVX approach, which really speaks to me as a gamer. And I thought they did a lot of things really great and had a lot of great potential.
Awesome. Yeah, Arcade was a huge inspiration, it would seem. Next up, we have Black Desert Online.
I'd probably put BDO at a 6.
All right, BDO at number 6.
And that's just because, for me, I think BDO is a beautiful game.
Yes.
I think they have a lot of cool PvP engagement. I think they do a really interesting take on action combat. So yeah, I'd put them at a 6.
Lovely. All right. Next up, this is one I'm actually not aware of, but I heard that you may be. Ion. Or Aeon.
Yeah, Ion was good. I would probably put Ion at a 4. I really liked the three-dimensional aspect of combat in Ion. I liked their PvX dungeon. I think it was called the like Dredgian or something. Um, and I guess I'm a little bit of an NCSoft fanboy. I tend to enjoy the games they released, and I thought Ion was a great game.
All right.
Okay.
Next up, we have a recent launch. So maybe, you haven't had time to play it, but you've been keeping an eye on it, maintaining it. Just keeping a
You just said NCSoft too.
And you just said NCSoft, which brings us to an MMO that just released here in October. Oops, that's a preview. Well, we're going to go to New World.
No.
I've clicked the wrong one. So New World.
New World I would put at probably a 9 for me personally. I think that, first of all, I think the New World team is great. I think that the quality of their art was phenomenal. I think that the world they try to create was interesting. I think that there could have been a heavier investment on the narrative systems.
Yeah.
I think that there could have been a greater diversification of the enemy types that you faced. And to be honest, I'm not quite a big fan of the modern approach of divesting from class design. I think that classes are a trope that players want. And while I think it's innovative to, be tied into, weapon as your kind of de facto class, I'm more of a larger rotation skill set player. So that's why I put them at a 9.
I like it. Respect that. Next one is another NCSoft title, and since you're an NCSoft fanboy, we have one that released this month, and Throne and Liberty. And I think I know where this one has to go. What are your thoughts on Throne and Liberty?
Yeah, I wouldn't be too off from the 3 there. I think Throne and Liberty is a beautiful game. I think for a UE4 game, they really did. It's probably the best looking UE4 game I've ever seen.
Yes.
I think that from a monetization standpoint, I'm not a fan of pay to win. I think that building that into the game does yourself a disservice when it comes to the LTV that's possible within when it comes to the lifetime value of a customer. You do yourself as a company a disservice by integrating pay to win. I think that's something that could be a key takeaway from Throne of Liberty's release. But I think that obviously what NCSoft does great ever since Lineage and their MMOs is their network performance. I think they have large player battles. Throne of Liberty really shines in that regard.
Yes.
They have strong narratives. They have strong cutscenes. I think that there could be some additional attention paid to on the combat side, but I saw significant changes made, so I have no doubt that they'll continue to improve on that. I'd agree with Throne of Liberty there.
All right. I love everything you just said because that's literally my opinion on Throne of Liberty. Most beautiful UE4 game I've seen, and their performance in large scale is impressive. That's literally my whole opinion, and I don't like to pay to win.
I need to make sure this segment, if any of those companies or design leads are listening and want additional takeaways from me, I'm just a lowly fellow MMO junkie. I am happy to, go into more detail on my thoughts in my email. Just hit me up on LinkedIn.
There you go. And that's how the whole consult. Yes, that's how the whole genre gets better. There you go. That was fun. That was I think that was something different.
I'm gonna have to have a chat with the community team about how this game snuck through into the interview.
Oh boy,
someone's in trouble.
Leave Margaret alone. She came up with this whole thing, by the way. Don't be mad at us. It was all Margaret's idea. Oh
my goodness.
Wow. Look at him funny. Just kicking the blame off to the next person. Unbelievable.
She's gonna get me for that one. All right. So while we're having fun, we got one more fun section for you. We are going to have quick. Yeah, it's going to be really quick, and that's actually a pun, which you'll realize in a second. But we're going to have a rapid fire question round. This doesn't need to be as deep and detailed as the Q&A round. These are questions you're supposed to answer within, I don't even want you thinking about it, just rapid fire. You got 2 or 3 seconds to choose between the 2 options or whatever the case may be.
Oh my gosh, this is another minefield. You guys are giving me another mine. You're gonna have
not by design at all.
No, totally not. And of course, if you want to elaborate on one of your answers, do so. But you got to do the choice part first. You got to do that part first. And I'll let no one here go ahead and start us off.
Oh my goodness.
Football or basketball?
Football.
Tab target or action combat?
So this, by the way, this is good. So because it's as long as it's not genre related, I'm cool with that. I don't mind this at all. Okay, what was the question?
Tab target or action combat?
Unbelievable. We just talked about football and basketball. Now we're going to tab target.
Oh, you were going to keep you on your toes.
Oh no. I would say tab target.
What's your favorite Goosebumps book?
Ooh, probably the Cuckoo Clock.
Okay, that's a good one. New York or Chicago style pizza?
New York. Deep dish can just be. Deep dish will put you literally in a coma.
Fair. Gathering or crafting?
Crafting.
All right.
I like to wheel and deal on the resources that I don't have available to me, as opposed to the mindless gathering approach.
Sure.
And crafters make the best shit out here.
That's true.
I've heard that. All right. Eat pineapple on pizza or get rid of combat pets?
Oh my god. Probably get rid of combat pets.
Yes.
Pineapple on pizza is nasty as shit.
Yes.
That's okay. All right. Proximity chat or Discord chat?
Discord chat. I want to keep proximity chat relegated to taverns. So basically, that's opt-in. If the player wants to go in and hear people screaming at each other, then that's a choice they can have.
Lovely. Okay. All right. Nerf the boss or tell players to just get good?
Tell players to get good. Sometimes I have to tell my designers to get good.
Oh, man.
No, I'm just kidding. I oftentimes in my meetings will always give the direction to err on the side of difficult. Yeah.
Okay. Love PvX or hate PvEers?
Love PvX or hate PvEers? Love PvX. Why would I hate PvEers?
Hey, people been asking.
Oh, no.
All right. Save a cute kitten from starvation or PvE servers?
Save the cute kitten from starvation.
All right. You go to a tavern or a bar. What drink are you ordering?
I'm ordering mead, aka Guinness.
Let's go. All right. No combat actions allowed while being the passenger on a mount or allow Varen drive-bys?
No combat actions allowed on a mount, other than the actions that the mount has available to it through breeding.
Okay.
Oh.
Get all classified government information on aliens, but you have to make Ashes pay to win, or never get information on aliens, but Ashes has the biggest MMO launch in the last 10 years.
Never get information on aliens, biggest MMO launch in 10 years.
All right. I like that you didn't have to think about it.
That hurt me. That hurt me a little bit. That hurt me a little bit
Tough
because
choice.
There's definitely information we need to get.
We need to get it, yes. All right. And last one is going to be change tank archetype name or shave your head completely bald.
Change the tank archetype name. However, as I've said, it needs to be supported in the community discussion. And the last time we've had a Reddit thread in the community where we got, I don't know, some 1,000 some odd responses, it was contentious.
Yeah. I've done one not recent. It was probably like 6 months ago, and it was like only 52%, but it was more people voting for the tank change name. I'll do another one. I'll do another one after I post this video actually, and we'll see if people would prefer like a guardian or protector, vanguard, whatever people come up with. Okay. So as we close out here, we just want to just give you the opportunity, just give you the floor to just speak. Is there a message or any reminders you want to send out to the community?
Yeah, I think that it's probably a message the community has heard me say on a number of occasions. But right now is a very high stress, high reward time for the team, um, because we are actively testing A2. This is a big moment for us. And I just want to reiterate that as ambassadors of this project, of this community, we all collectively, if we care about the outcome of Ashes of Creation, have a responsibility to ensure that people understand what phase we are in development, the approach that we take towards development, the benefit that a transparent development process provides us, and the types of feedback and commentary that we look for from even our unengaged audiences about what we are doing here as a team. We believe in the genre of MMORPGs. We believe in the audience that loves this genre along with us. And we want to be partners with that audience in helping to create something that's special. And we believe Ashes is that special thing. We may not always agree as players what a particular decision that's made happens to be. But I think that we can look at the sincerity of myself and the team that's working on this project and know that our end goal is to make our players proud. And to that end, we are committed in making sure that our engagement is always fruitful, is constant, and is intuitive to what our audiences are telling us. So, with that understanding in place, your support, your positive words of encouragement go a long way in ensuring that we as a team, when we're working late nights, are doing it in order to provide an experience that we're going to feel very rewarding from you guys when you guys have an opportunity to test the game. So keep that in mind as the NDA comes off and as players see what we're building. And know that this is not the end of the road. This is a point along the road where what we're doing is going to get better, and the content that we create is going to get different and more fun. And this is all a part of that process, that holistic process.
Perfect. All right. So before we close out here, just wanted to give everybody a reminder that Alpha 2 will officially launch on October 25th or as early as October 25th, depending on what package you purchased. You can get a pack from ashesofcreation.com. I'll have my referral link in the description if you want to choose to look into it and sign up that way. Just wanted to once again thank Steven for being here. We really appreciate you taking the time out and being one of the voices of Vera and just giving us this opportunity again. You guys can follow me on YouTube, Nyce Gaming, Twitch, Nyce Gaming TV, No One on YouTube and on Twitch as well. And of course, we'll have a link to the official Ashes of Creation YouTube, and that's where you can find the footage that you've seen in the background available in 4K, much better quality. And if you want to join us on Discord, we have the official Voices of Vera Discord. And if you would like to join our guild syndicate, we'll have a way to do so inside of that Discord. We appreciate all of you being here. We could not do this without you, the Voices of Vera. Thank you guys so much.